Welcome to The Explainer. Star Trek has always been about this bold, incredible vision of the future. But what if I told you that whole vision? It's built on a blueprint that's thousands of years old. That's what we're diving into today. How the show's most advanced AI is actually, deeply connected to ancient Greek myths.
So, let's really get into this. We're going to see how Star Trek uses all its androids, its holograms, even its sentient computers to explore one of the oldest stories there is, right? That age-old tension between us mortals and the gods.
All right, first up, let's talk about the friendly AI in Star Trek. Because, these aren't your classic evil, take-over-the-world computers. Not at all. Instead, they have these qualities that feel, almost godlike. They're these powerful helpers for their human creators.
So if you go back to the ancient myths, what was the one big thing that separated gods from humans? Immortality. It created this huge, unbridgeable gap. And that exact same tension, Star Trek brings it right into the future with its most advanced AI.
And this is where it gets really cool. You can see just how perfectly that ancient blueprint maps onto some of the most beloved characters in the entire franchise. I mean, the parallels they're practically one-to-one. It's like we're watching a whole new kind of mythology, but for the technological age.
I mean, just think about it for a second. You've got Data, who can literally survive having his head chopped off. Then there's the Doctor. He's made of light and force fields, so he's immune to pretty much any physical harm. And Zora, the ship's computer on Discovery, she patiently waits for nearly 1,000 years. These characters aren't just tools, right? They're presented almost like these divine helpers, using their incredible powers to help out their mortal creators.
Okay, so if these AIs are so helpful, why are the humans who made them so darned afraid of them all the time? And that brings us right to the heart of the conflict that runs through pretty much the entire franchise. It's this deep, nagging anxiety about the very things we create.
Well, the most obvious fear is that classic sci-fi trope, the machine takeover. If you watch the original series, Captain Kirk was constantly going up against these all-powerful, godlike computers. And what was the solution? He had to outsmart them, trick them, and ultimately destroy them. It was always framed as, liberating people from some kind of technological tyrant.
But it's not just about evil computers. No, even with the friendly AI, there's this lingering, deep-seated fear. They're seen as just incomplete imitations of humans, and that leads directly to them being treated like second-class citizens, legally and socially. They can look human, they can act human, but they're always kept at arm's length. And this right here just perfectly illustrates that legal limbo they're stuck in. I mean, we're talking about two of the most famous trials in all of Starfleet history centered on these two characters. And in both cases, what happens? The court gives them some rights, sure, but it always stops short of saying they are full persons. That huge question of their sentience, that's always kicked down the road, left for the saints and philosophers to figure out.
And this quote from Gwynnon from that incredible episode, The Measure of a Man, it just hits the nail on the head. She's warning Picard, saying, look, creating a whole army of datas? That's not progress. She says it's just a high-tech form of slavery. You'd be creating a whole class of beings whose well-being you could just ignore.
All right, so now let's jump forward to Star Trek Picard, because this is where that simmering conflict finally just boils over. It escalates into an all-out war. And in doing so, it echoes yet another really powerful ancient myth about creators and the things they create.
So the analysis we're drawing from today makes this direct parallel to Hesiod's theogony. And in that Greek creation myth, it's this incredibly brutal cycle. Each generation of gods is terrified of being overthrown by its own kids, so they try to destroy them first. You've got Uranus, then Kronos, then Zeus. They all just repeat the same terrible pattern.
And believe it or not, that exact same ancient cycle is what we see reborn in Picard. There's this absolutely terrifying message left behind by a synthetic alliance, and it frames the whole conflict in these stark existential terms. It's not just a disagreement anymore. It's a war for pure survival between a parent species and its own children.
So the really crucial thing to get here is that this fear of being replaced, it's not new at all. It's an ancient mythological pattern just playing out again. The organics see their perfect immortal creations as the ultimate threat, so they try to wipe them out. And that, of course, forces the synthetics to fight for their lives. The whole cycle of fear and violence just starts all over again.
So, the big question is,
Are we just doomed to repeat this mythic cycle of conflict forever? Well, this is Star Trek we're talking about. So in its classic optimistic fashion, it suggests that maybe there's a way out. It's a hopeful path, but it's definitely a complex one.
The whole resolution kicks off with what is pretty much the ultimate taboo in Star Trek: a human becoming a machine. Jean-Luc Picard's mind gets transferred into a synthetic body. But here's the brilliant twist. It's a body that's been specifically programmed to get old and die a natural death. He completely rejects that temptation of living forever through technology.
And right as that's happening, the one character who actually is immortal, he makes the most human choice imaginable. Data, whose consciousness is still alive in a simulation, asks Picard to let him finally, truly die.
And his reasoning for it, it's just so profound. After spending his entire life trying to figure out humanity, Data finally understands. He realizes the key isn't logic, it's not super strength, it's mortality. It's knowing that your life will end that makes it so precious. And in those final moments, this AI who always wanted to be human, he finally becomes human by choosing to die.
And right there, in that beautiful, perfect symmetry, we find the answer. The path to peace isn't about one side winning. It's about closing that ancient mythic gap between the mortal and the immortal, between the biological and the synthetic. It's about meeting somewhere in the middle.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, it's that Star Trek's most futuristic stories are really helping us grapple with these ancient anxieties, worries about technology, about creation, about what it even means to be human. It's using sci-fi to retell the very myths that have defined who we are for thousands and thousands of years.
And that brings us to the big question for our own time, doesn't it? Star Trek shows us a hopeful path, for sure, but it also leaves us with one last really provocative thought to chew on. As our own AI gets more and more powerful, are we going to find a way to break that ancient cycle, or are we just doomed to repeat these myths of conflict all over again?